The courthouse clock struck noon as sunlight spilled across the stone steps, and Serena Bloom walked out alone, her divorce papers warm in her hands like something that still had a pulse. People around her moved on with their lives, laughing, checking phones, arguing about lunch, while inside her chest a marriage had just ended. She told herself she felt relief. She told herself she was finally free from a man she had labeled selfish. Yet as the door closed behind her, a strange heaviness followed her into the bright day, the kind that doesn't leave even when the sky is clear. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet goodness people sometimes hide, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel, Kindness Journal. Stories like this exist because compassion does. Serena had married Marcus Hale in the optimism of her late 20s, when mornings felt endless and the future looked generous. Marcus was steady, careful, and practical to a fault. He believed in savings accounts, predictable routines, and saying no before saying yes. Serena, on the other hand, bloomed in spontaneity. She loved weekend trips planned at dawn, late lunches that turned into sunset walks, and the feeling of being surprised by life. At first, their differences felt complementary, like two colors that made sense together. Over time, they became sharp edges. She called him selfish because he guarded his time and money like something fragile. When her mother needed help, Marcus insisted on budgets and boundaries. When Serena wanted to donate to causes that tugged at her heart, Marcus asked for spreadsheets. He never raised his voice, never slammed doors, never cheated. He simply withheld the kind of emotional generosity Serena craved. Each careful decision felt to her like a refusal to fully show up. Years of small disappointments stacked quietly, until love felt like a ledger that never balanced. The divorce was civil, almost cold. Marcus moved out in the daytime while Serena was at work, leaving the apartment spotless and echoing. He took only what was his, labeled boxes, and left behind the houseplants he knew she loved. Serena noticed the absence immediately, but she told herself absence was better than feeling alone with someone who didn't meet her halfway. Friends told her she had done the right thing. They used words like growth and self-respect. She repeated them until they sounded true. Life moved forward in daylight rhythms. Serena changed jobs, found a smaller apartment with big windows, and learned to sleep in the middle of the bed. Marcus disappeared from her daily orbit, becoming a name she occasionally saw in emails about finalized paperwork. She didn't ask about him. He didn't reach out. Time did what time always does, it softened the sharpest memories and blurred the rest. Years later, on an ordinary bright morning, Serena noticed the fatigue. Not the kind fixed by coffee, but something heavier, like her bones were carrying extra weight. Bruises appeared without explanation. Stairs felt steeper. She told herself it was stress, then age, then bad sleep. The diagnosis came after a series of daytime appointments filled with fluorescent lights and careful voices. Cancer was a word that landed quietly and then expanded, filling every corner of her life. Treatment reshaped her days. Mornings were for appointments, afternoons for rest, evenings for counting pills and trying to eat. Medical bills arrived in thick envelopes that piled on the kitchen counter like silent witnesses. Serena had savings, but cancer has a way of outpacing even careful plans. She sold jewelry she rarely wore, canceled subscriptions, and learned which groceries lasted the longest. Pride kept her from asking for help. She told friends she was managing, because managing sounded stronger than surviving. One afternoon, while opening the mail in full daylight, Serena noticed something strange. A hospital bill stamped with a balance due had been marked paid. At first she assumed insurance had finally processed something correctly. Then it happened again, and again. A pharmacy receipt zeroed out. A utility bill cleared early. No notes, no explanations, just paid. She called billing departments, assuming an error. Each time she was told the same thing, the account had been settled by a third party who wished to remain anonymous. Confusion gave way to unease. Serena reviewed her bank statements, certain she had missed something. The numbers didn't lie. Someone was quietly lifting a burden she hadn't asked them to carry. In a world that suddenly felt fragile, the mystery became a strange comfort. On days when nausea pinned her to the couch and sunlight felt too bright, knowing the bills were paid allowed her to breathe a little easier. Across town, Marcus Hale lived a life that would have looked small to anyone else but made perfect sense to him. He had moved into a modest house with a narrow yard that caught the sun in the afternoons. His job was steady, his routines intact. He had not remarried. He volunteered occasionally, kept a careful budget, and still believed in saying no before yes. The divorce had not hardened him, it had simply rearranged him. Marcus learned about Serena's illness by accident, overhearing a conversation at a grocery store where a mutual acquaintance spoke too loudly. He stood in the cereal aisle, fluorescent lights buzzing, as the word cancer settled into his chest like a stone. He did not reach out. He did not send flowers. He went home and sat in the quiet, remembering Serena's laugh, the way she turned her face toward the sun, the things he had failed to give her when it mattered. That night, in the clarity that comes when decisions feel obvious, Marcus logged into his accounts and made a payment. Then another. He called hospitals and pharmacies, asking about anonymous options. He was careful, precise, and invisible. This was something he could do without asking permission or reopening wounds. He did not want gratitude. He wanted relief for her, even if she never knew the source. Weeks passed in this strange parallel existence. Serena fought through treatments during the day, noticing how the sun changed angles as seasons shifted. Marcus worked his job and paid bills in secret, adjusting his own life quietly. He skipped vacations, cooked more at home, sold a few things he didn't need. It felt right, like a correction rather than a sacrifice. Eventually, the truth surfaced, as truths tend to do. Serena received a call from a billing office that made a mistake, mentioning a name instead of anonymity. Marcus Hale. The room seemed to tilt. Serena sat in the daylight, phone pressed to her ear, as memories rearranged themselves. She thought of the labeled boxes, the houseplants he left behind, the man she had called selfish because he measured love differently than she did. Understanding arrived slowly, without drama. Marcus had never been careless with his heart, he had been careful with his commitments. He loved through action, through provision, through showing up in ways that didn't ask for applause. Serena had wanted fireworks. Marcus had offered a steady flame. She did not call him right away. Pride and gratitude wrestled inside her. When she finally did, the conversation was simple, almost awkward, filled with daylight pauses. Marcus did not explain himself. He did not apologize or ask forgiveness. He simply hoped she was getting better. Serena thanked him, her voice steady despite the weight of it all. They did not revisit the past. They acknowledged the present. Treatment continued. Some days were better than others. The sun still rose, appointments still filled the mornings, and bills no longer loomed like threats. Serena felt a new kind of strength growing alongside her vulnerability. She began to understand that people can love you even after you leave them, and that kindness does not always announce itself. As months passed, her health improved. The word remission was spoken carefully, like something fragile but hopeful. Serena walked outside one afternoon, feeling the warmth on her face, realizing how close she had come to losing this ordinary miracle of daylight. She thought of Marcus, of the quiet way he had stood by her from a distance, and felt something loosen inside her chest. They did not reunite. Life rarely ties things up so neatly. But they met once, in a small cafe flooded with afternoon sun, and shared a simple moment of mutual respect. The past was no longer a battleground. It was a lesson. Serena learned that selfishness and self-protection are not always the same thing, and that love can exist without possession. Marcus learned that sometimes the most generous thing you can do is give without being seen. Both carried these truths forward, changed but intact. If this story has touched your heart, if it has reminded you that goodness often works quietly in the background, take a moment to engage with this video. Your support helps keep stories like this alive. And just before we end, leave a comment sharing what kindness means to you, or a time when someone helped you without asking for anything in return. In the end, under the wide, forgiving daylight, Serena Bloom survived more than cancer. She survived misunderstanding, pride, and loss, emerging with a deeper understanding of love. Somewhere across town, Marcus Hale continued his careful life, knowing that sometimes the best things we do are the ones no one ever sees.